Diddy owns custom jets, custom mansions, and custom cars. But before we get to that, we're gonna start with his custom chains, worth more than your house. Because this isn't the kind of stuff you grab from a store window. We're talking one-of-one pieces, designed specifically for him. The most iconic is obviously the Diamond Bad Boy Records chain. Iced out so heavy, it looks like it could throw off your balance just wearing it. That chain alone is worth millions. And it's more than jewelry. It's branding, legacy, and ego, all in one piece. On top of that, Diddy's been seen wearing massive Cuban links, custom Jesus pieces, in layered diamond chains that most people couldn't even insure, let alone wear casually. And it doesn't stop there. He also owns multiple iced out watches, worth an estimated $6 million total, including Richard Mille pieces, Audemar's Piguets, and custom Rolexes completely flooded in diamonds. These aren't watches you wear to tell time, they're watches you wear to remind everyone else theirs doesn't matter. Altogether, his jewelry and watch collection easily clears $15 million on the high end, and that's just the stuff he's been seen wearing publicly. But if this is what he throws on just to step outside, imagine what he's pulling up in, because Diddy's car collection isn't a single garage, it's a rotation. He's been rich for decades, which means cars come and go, move between properties, and sometimes only appear once before being replaced. And on top of that, he regularly buys cars as gifts for family, which still counts as money he spent, starting with Rolls-Royce, because that's the foundation of his fleet. Diddy has been seen in multiple Rolls-Royce Phantoms, likely bespoke builds. High-end Phantom specs are famous for the Starlight headliner, where hundreds of tiny fiber optic lights are hand-installed into the ceiling to recreate real star constellations. Some bespoke Phantom interiors even include ultra-rare materials in the trim, turning the inside of the car into a literal art piece. He's also been linked to a Rolls-Royce Phantom Drophead Coupe, the convertible version of the Phantom. What makes this car unique is the marine-grade teak wood decking in the rear, similar to what you'd find on a luxury yacht. Rolls-Royce designed it so cruising feels more like floating than driving. Then there's the Rolls-Royce Cullinan, the ultra-luxury SUV. The Cullinan uses a road-scanning suspension that reads the pavement ahead and adjusts before the wheels even hit bumps, keeping the cabin perfectly level. It also features rear-hinge suicide doors, so stepping inside feels more like boarding a private jet than getting into an SUV. Diddy has also been a longtime Maybach guy, especially the Maybach 62. This car was designed so the owner would never sit in the front seat. The rear seats recline nearly flat, include heated massage functions, privacy curtains, and built-in compartments for drinks. It's executive transport, not a driver's car. And this isn't just for him. For his son's 16th birthday, Diddy bought him a Maybach worth well over $300,000, casually turning a teenager's first car into a full luxury sedan, built for heads of state. On the classic side, Diddy also owns a 1958 Chevrolet Corvette, a piece of American automotive history. At this point, that car isn't transportation, it's a rolling trophy that only comes out for special occasions. Then there's the supercar rotation. Over the years, Diddy has been seen in or strongly linked to multiple Ferraris, including the Ferrari 360 Modena Spider and the Ferrari F430 Spider. These cars are built around high-revving engines and Formula One-inspired driving systems. They're loud, dramatic, and designed to be seen as much as they're meant to be driven. He's also been associated with a Lamborghini Gallardo Spider, a convertible supercar built entirely around attention, low stance, sharp angles, and a screaming engine. The kind of car that turns every pull-up into a spectacle for everyday movement and security. Diddy regularly uses high-spec Cadillac Escalades. These aren't standard SUVs. Celebrity-level Escalades are often customized with extended wheelbases, upgraded interiors, and privacy features, making them perfect for convoys and low-key travel. And the family cars add even more to the total. Diddy bought matching Range Rovers for his twin daughters when they turned 16, and he's also gifted his mother a Bentley, along with a massive cash gift. Even his partners have reportedly received Maybach SUVs, meaning his gift cars alone cost more than most people's entire collections. When you add it all up, Rolls-Royces, Maybachs, Ferraris, Lamborghinis, classics, Escalades, and an entire second lineup of cars bought for family, Diddy's car footprint pushes $40 million on the high end. And the craziest part, this still isn't even his biggest flex, because once you stop driving yourself, cars stop being transportation and start being accessories. But a certain level of wealth, transportation like flying commercial isn't just inconvenient, it's impossible. Diddy doesn't fly, he relocates. His private jet is believed to be a long-range, fully customized luxury aircraft, designed less like a plane and more like a flying compound. We're talking separate zones, not rows of seats. Up front, there's a private lounge area, styled more like a high-end hotel lobby than an airplane. Plush seating, custom lighting, and sound insulation so thick you barely feel like you're moving at all. Further back, the jet reportedly includes multiple private rooms, each built for a different purpose. One functions as a full bedroom, with a real bed, not a fold-out seat, designed for long-haul flights where sleep isn't optional, it's expected. But where things get interesting is the entertainment side of the jet. High-end celebrity jets often include themed rooms built purely for vibe, and Diddy's jet is rumored to lean heavily into that. Soft lighting, mirrored surfaces, premium sound systems, and lounge-style seating, the kind of setup where the destination stops mattering. There's even been long-running running talk in industry circles about a party room on board, a space stocked with luxury amenities, custom fragrances, and mood lighting, designed specifically for after-hours energy in the air. Not a bedroom, not a living room, something in between. Nothing about it is subtle. Added onboard staff quarters, gourmet catering capability, and a fully private bathroom setup that feels closer to a 5-star suite than an airplane restroom. And it's easy to see why the jet alone pushes $60 million on the high end once customization is factored in. And the real flex? This isn't just about comfort, it's about control. No TSA, no schedules, no witnesses. When Diddy steps onto his jet, the outside world shuts off, and whatever happens on board stays at 40,000 feet. And once you're flying like that, even mansions start feeling grounded. But Diddy doesn't just own mansions, he owns environments. Across places like Miami, Los Angeles, and New York, he's controlled multiple massive properties, each serving a different purpose in his life. And these aren't just big houses meant for comfort, they're designed for privacy, separation, and control. Take his Miami estate. Waterfront mansions like this aren't priced by square footage, they're priced by how difficult they are to access. Elongated driveways, limited sight lines, and layouts designed so neighbors might as well not exist. Inside, everything is open, oversized, and built to host large groups without ever feeling crowded. Multiple entertainment areas, multiple lounge spaces, rooms designed specifically for sound, lighting, and atmosphere. At night, these places don't feel like homes, they feel like venues. Then there's Los Angeles, where the energy shifts completely. The LA properties are more isolated, tucked into high-end areas, where privacy is enforced naturally. Long approaches, heavy landscaping, multiple access points. Inside, the design is calmer, quieter, more controlled. This is where meetings happen, where planning happens, where people are invited selectively, not casually. And then there's New York. Real estate at this level in New York isn't about space, it's about proximity to influence. These properties function more like private headquarters than homes. Soundproof interiors, private entrances. You can be inside and forget there's an entire city outside, but what really separates these properties from normal celebrity mansions isn't the size or the price, it's the layout. Each estate reportedly contains multiple suites that function like hotel rooms rather than bedrooms, private bathrooms, walk-in closets bigger than apartments, lighting systems that can completely change the mood of a room in seconds. There are dedicated spaces for entertaining, for relaxing, for hosting, and for retreating. And then there are the rooms people don't usually talk about, not guest rooms, not offices, just areas designed to be off the radar. Spaces meant for discretion, spaces meant for privacy, spaces that aren't shown in listings or photos. Over the years, lawsuits, allegations, and public reporting have raised questions about what went on inside some of these properties. Nothing we're talking about here has been proven in court, but multiple accusations describe environments where power, wealth, and influence blurred lines that shouldn't be blurred. And when you look at how these mansions are built, the isolation, the security, the way access is controlled, it's hard not to understand why those questions exist. Security is baked into everything: gated perimeters, private staff, surveillance, and layouts that naturally separate guests from personal areas. At this level, security isn't about reacting to problems. It's about making sure the outside world never even knows what's happening inside. When homes get this big, this private, and this protected, privacy stops looking like comfort. It starts looking like insulation, and when multiple accusations all point toward the same types of environments, places where people felt powerless, controlled, or unable to leave, these properties stop being impressive. They start being unsettling, because the higher the walls are, the quieter everything inside becomes. And even with all that space, even with estates worth hundreds of millions, Diddy still needed places where the rules felt even looser, places where isolation was total, places that floated. Alright, continuing seamlessly. No titles, no breaks, just straight narration. After the mansions, the next step up in privacy isn't another house, it's water, because yachts operate under a completely different set of rules. Diddy has been linked to multiple ultra-luxury yachts, either owned outright, chartered long-term, or reserved so consistently they might as well be his. And these aren't boats meant for cruising around the coast for fun. They're floating estates designed to keep people comfortable, entertained, and completely cut off from the outside world. At this level, yachts aren't judged by length alone, they're judged by how many environments they can create on board. The main deck is usually built like an open-air resort. Wide lounging areas, shaded seating, and dining spaces designed so dozens of people can gather without feeling crowded. Everything is cushioned, soft, and positioned to make time feel slower. You're not rushing anywhere when the ocean's moving at your pace. Inside, the main salon feels more like a luxury hotel lobby than a boat. Floor-to-ceiling windows, custom furniture bolted into place so nothing shifts, and sound systems tuned so music stays rich without carrying across the vessel. Conversations stay contained, energy stays controlled. Then there are the private cabins. On yachts like this, cabins aren't bedrooms, they're suites. King-size beds, private bathrooms, walk-in showers, climate controls, and soundproofing so thick you forget there are other people on board. Everyone has their own space, which means no one feels like they're staying somewhere temporarily. They're settled. And then there are the restricted areas. Most high-end yachts include zones that only certain guests are allowed into, not because they're dangerous, but because discretion reputation matters. These rooms don't show up in promotional photos. They're not part of the tour. They exist purely for privacy. Soft lighting, deep seating, minimal windows. Spaces designed to feel detached from time, location, and responsibility. Crew members on yachts like this operate under strict confidentiality agreements. They're trained not to ask questions, not to linger, and not to remember anything they don't need to. Service appears when it's wanted and disappears when it's not. And that's where yachts start showing up again and again in allegations involving powerful people. Because when you're offshore, things change. Jurisdiction changes, visibility changes, accountability gets blurry. Over the years, multiple lawsuits and reports involving elite figures, not just Diddy, but powerful people in general, have described yachts as places where boundaries felt looser, oversight was minimal, and power dynamics became impossible to escape. Again, nothing we're talking about here is proven fact. These are allegations and patterns that come up repeatedly in public reporting. But when you look at the design of these yachts, it's easy to see why they're mentioned. No cameras, no neighbors, no bystanders, just ocean, staff, and whoever was invited. Some of these yachts also include onboard spas, massage rooms, and wellness areas. Spaces meant for relaxation on paper, but which, according to certain accusations and similar cases involving wealthy figures, could become something else entirely depending on who controlled the environment. And once the yacht leaves port, leaving isn't simple. You don't just call a ride. You don't just walk out. You wait until someone decides it's time. That's what makes yachts such a powerful extension of wealth. They aren't just luxurious, they're isolating. And when isolation meets money, status, and influence, the line between consent, pressure, and control becomes harder to see. That's why yachts aren't just flexes for billionaires and moguls. They're tools. Floating worlds where the rules feel optional and the outside world feels very far away. And even after the jets, the mansions, and the yachts, there's still an entire layer of Diddy's world people rarely talk about. Because some of his most expensive possessions aren't meant to be seen at all. They're meant to be used. One of the biggest is his private recording and production infrastructure. Diddy didn't just rent studios when inspiration hit. Over the years, he's controlled fully built, private recording environments designed to operate without outside engineers, outside staff, or outside oversight. These spaces aren't just rooms with microphones. They're acoustically engineered from the ground up, with walls designed to absorb and shape sound in ways that cost millions before a single piece of equipment is added. Inside, studios like this are often stocked with vintage analog gear that can't even be replaced anymore. Old school mixing consoles, rare compressors, tape machines, and hardware that modern studios don't use because it's too expensive and too fragile. Equipment like that isn't about convenience. It's about control over the final sound. What you hear in those rooms is the version no one else gets to hear, and attached to those studios are private listening rooms. Spaces tuned so precisely that a song can sound completely different there than it does anywhere else. When someone like Diddy approves a track, he's not hearing it the way the public does. He's hearing it in an environment designed specifically for his ears. Then there's the art. High-level art collecting isn't about decoration. It's about storage of value and signaling power. Diddy has been linked to owning museum-level contemporary art, the kind that never goes on tour, never gets loaned out, and never gets photographed. Pieces that live in private rooms, climate-controlled, insured for amounts most people wouldn't even believe. Art like that isn't meant to impress guests. It's meant to impress other collectors, because owning certain pieces quietly places you in rooms the public never sees. Rooms where money moves without announcements, and reputation matters more than liquidity. And right alongside the art is something even more controlled. His fashion archive. Not a closet, an archive. Decades of custom-made outfits, one-of-one designer pieces, rare vintage fashion, and materials that aren't even legally sourced anymore. Items preserved in climate-controlled storage, organized, cataloged, and protected like museum artifacts. At this level, fashion stops being something you wear and becomes something you own historically. Some pieces only come out once, some never come out at all. Then there's security, not bodyguards standing in suits. Systems. High-profile figures like Diddy spend millions every year on layered security that most people never notice. Rotating personnel, surveillance systems across properties, access control, transport coordination, counter-surveillance measures designed to detect threats before they ever get close. Security like that isn't reactive, it's preventative. And over time, that kind of protection costs tens of millions. Not because of danger alone, but because privacy at that level has to be constantly maintained. The moment you relax, exposure creeps in. And finally, there are the invisible assets. The things you don't put in interviews or social media posts. Long-term contracts, private agreements, entire businesses that function less like companies and more like lifestyle extensions. Fashion brands that shape image. Media ventures that shape narrative. Hospitality investments that quietly control who gets access to what. These aren't flexes for the public. They're levers. Ways to influence environments without ever being seen doing it. When you stack all of this together, the studios, the art, the archives, the security, the unseen systems, the picture changes. Because at this level, wealth isn't about owning expensive things. It's about owning infrastructure. And infrastructure is what allows everything else to happen. Which is why, when people talk about Diddy's world, they don't just talk about what he owned, they talk about what it enabled. And that brings us to the rooms where all of that infrastructure was finally put to use. The parties. Because that's where access stopped being about money. started being about power. The parties are where everything comes together. This is where the houses, the jets, and the yachts stop being assets and start being filters. Because Diddy's most infamous events weren't just parties. They were gate-kept environments, rooms where access alone meant status, and exclusion meant you didn't matter. For years, his invite-only gatherings, especially the legendary white parties, were treated like cultural milestones. If you were there, you'd made it. If you weren't, people noticed. Celebrities, athletes, executives, models, and industry power players all packed into the same spaces, dressed the same way, moving under the same rules. And those rules were never written down. The settings were always immaculate. Massive estates transformed into controlled venues, music carefully curated, lighting intentionally low, alcohol flowing freely, staff everywhere, but somehow invisible at the same time. On the surface, it looked like celebration. Underneath, it was hierarchy. Who got invited mattered. Who stayed late mattered more. And who had access to certain rooms mattered most of all. Over the years, lawsuits, public accusations, and reporting have repeatedly pointed to environments like these as places where power dynamics became distorted. Again, nothing here is stated as proven fact. These are allegations, but the patterns are hard to ignore. Multiple accusers in various cases involving powerful figures have described parties where saying no didn't feel like an option, where leaving wasn't easy, and where the presence of wealth and influence created pressure that didn't need to be spoken out loud. And when you look at how these parties were structured, it starts to make sense. Large open areas up front, more restricted spaces deeper inside, private rooms away from cameras and crowds. The deeper you went, the fewer people were allowed, and access wasn't random, it was controlled. Security wasn't there to protect guests, it was there to protect the environment. Staff were trained to redirect, delay, or deny movement without causing scenes. If you didn't belong somewhere, you simply wouldn't end up there. People inside these circles have long said the real power wasn't money, it was gatekeeping. Careers were built in these rooms, relationships were formed, and according to allegations that later surfaced, lines were crossed that should never have been crossed. Again, these are claims, not convictions. But when multiple accusations over time describe the same types of spaces, the same types of pressures, and the same types of power imbalances, it changes how people look back at the spectacle, because these weren't chaotic house parties, they were designed experiences. And design is never accidental. At this level, the party isn't about fun, it's about control. Control over access, control over opportunity, control over who feels important and who feels disposable. That's why these events have taken on such a different meaning in hindsight. What once looked like celebration now looks like leverage. And when allegations began stacking up, people stopped asking what happened at these parties and started asking why the same environments kept showing up in the stories. Because when wealth, isolation, and influence all exist in the same room, accountability tends to disappear first. And that's the real cost of living like this. Not the jet, not the mansions, not the yachts, but the ability to build worlds where the rules bend and sometimes break without consequences until they don't. And when those worlds finally start cracking, everything that was hidden inside comes out. When you zoom out and look at everything together, the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. The jets weren't just about travel, they were about control over space. The mansions weren't just homes, they were about control over access. The yachts weren't just luxury, they were about isolation. And the parties weren't just celebrations, they were about who had power in the room. For years, all of this was sold as success, as hustle, as someone who made it and decided to enjoy the rewards. And for a long time, that story worked. People wanted to believe it, but as allegations, lawsuits, and investigations started stacking up, the same question kept coming back. Why did everything need to be so private? Why did so many environments rely on isolation? Why did the same types of rooms, the same types of setups, and the same power dynamics keep appearing in different stories? Again, none of this is stated as proven fact here. These are patterns drawn from public accusations, reporting, and legal filings. Patterns matter because wealth doesn't just buy nice things. At a certain level, it buys systems. Systems where rules feel optional. Systems where saying no feels complicated. Systems where accountability feels very far away. And that's the part people are reckoning with now. Not the money, not the jewelry, not the cars. But what happens when someone has enough power to build worlds where their version of reality is the only one that matters? Because eventually, every system gets tested. And when the walls start cracking, it's not the luxury people remember. It's what was hidden behind it. And that's why the most expensive thing Diddy ever owned wasn't a jet or a mansion or a yacht. It was control. And control is always the first thing people lose when the spotlight finally turns on.